How you doing?
Pretty good. How are
Yeah,
you?
I'm doing all right. Um, how was last night at the ATL? You had
It
it
was
pretty
pretty
good?
good. I'm actually just coming back from the airport. I dropped off the DJ that we flew up from LA.
Really? You got a DJ from LA to come all the
Yeah,
way up?
yeah. Joe's been trying to get some bigger talent. We have Benzie coming up next weekend. It's gonna be our first big show.
Yeah.
But we've just been doing kind of shooting from the hip.
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday before the Saturday, we kind of usually have things figured out for our Saturday show.
Yeah.
And yeah, right now it's just kind of a marketing thing, get people excited to come
Yeah.
to the ATL.
Yeah. Are you noticing like a bigger and bigger turnout every time?
Yeah, it's we've been playing around with some different pricing models. First night it was free. Then we did like $5 to get in, but you get a $5 voucher. And last night we had them pay $5
Mm-hmm.
and no voucher. So for me as a finance guy, like stuff like that is super interesting to see, how people behave,
Right.
especially when you're in an environment where you're serving people alcohol. It's a little weird.
Yeah.
Some people want to pregame, some people want to come in, enjoy the music,
Mm-hmm.
if they're gonna pay $5 anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just been a super interesting journey for me to get in from the finance space over to theater / restaurant /
Yeah.
music venue.
Right. Yeah. You do a whole bunch of stuff.
Exactly. So I'm not planning on being hands-on
Mm.
at the ATL. So I currently there's Joe Ostini. He's the day-to-day manager,
Mm.
and I've known him for a few years. And about 1.5 years ago, when I first looked at the space, it became for sale about 3 years ago, and I saw that it was for sale. I just went and toured it because I didn't have anything better to do on that Tuesday. And I don't remember what story I made up exactly, but somehow they let me go in. They did ask me what I wanted to do with it before they let me tour it, because apparently the last person who had toured it wanted to open up a strip club.
Oh,
And they only found that out after the tour
yeah.
and realized that probably not going to fly with the city of Arcata. So we toured it, and it's a cool space, but what really made me fall in love with it is that upstairs, the owners had built out the loft space,
Yeah.
and it makes for a really nice office space right now for my financial advising business,
Mm.
and makes for easy access to downstairs at the ATL when I need to help Joe with something, or just kind of drop in for this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
Like last night when someone didn't show up, we can just go down and sub for that person for a little bit.
Yeah. So now
Makes
you're
it
running
super
both
convenient.
businesses out of the same
Yeah.
building.
And it's kind of a billboard too. People like a tangible object.
Mhm.
That's why so many people like real estate
Yeah.
as an investment. And I have a lot of clients that will not deviate from real estate. That's all they do,
Mm.
because they know it's something physical. You
Mhm.
can, even if shit hits the fan, you can still live in the place.
Yeah. Even if it blows up, you still own the land.
That's true, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So it's super attractive to a lot of people, and it brings credibility to what I'm doing,
Mhm.
not only in the financial advising space, but everything, all the other ventures I have going on
Yeah.
in my life.
Yeah. Let's talk about when you were first touring the place. What year was it built? Do you know?
It was built in 1938, I
1938.
believe, give or take a few years.
Okay. And do you know why they were selling it?
So they bought it in 2004
Mm.
from I don't know who exactly, but they had been running it as a normal theater. It's pretty run down.
Yeah.
They put a bunch of money into it, essentially gutted the whole place, and started realizing asbestos and ADA compliance, sprinklers, all of that stuff is super expensive.
Yeah. And they're like, oh fuck.
Exactly. But they were extremely thorough. Brian, it was Brian and Laura Cox. They're a couple. They're the ones who I'd known previously. He worked at the county previously
Mm.
as a health inspector, so he kind of had an eye for that type of stuff.
Right.
And I think that it became a little bit too much in terms of renovation,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of energy and a lot of passion, I think, put into there, that when they started running it, they were already like a few years in, and when they put it for sale in 2016, they were already ready to leave, and they didn't find a buyer soon enough, so things kind of dwindled.
Yeah.
And in especially the music industry, which is where space like that makes the most money
Mm-hmm.
because if people in there drinking alcohol,
Yeah.
buying tickets,
Right.
there is really a lack of consistency. So when you have a venue space that's, oh, it's for sale, is it even going to be ready in 2 months when I bring my artist through who I've already made a $1,000 or $2,000
Commitment.
exactly
Mm-hmm.
minimum, essentially. Even if everything falls through, you're still due that money.
Mm-hmm.
And people are running on such thin margins that they're not going to risk doing that. So as soon as they put it up for sale, they were ready to leave. No one was ready to take it, and that really hurt them
Yeah.
financially.
Yeah.
And
Mortgage still got to be paid.
exactly.
Yeah.
Every single day. I mean, we have about 15, 16 events next month. So if you look at every additional event you add, the mortgage payment per day essentially gets lower and lower and lower.
Mm-hmm.
The more you can use the space. And that's our goal in general, is to get as many people as possible into that space under any circumstances. Right now we're doing a lot of EDM shows because that's what we kind of know. That's what Joe has contacts with.
Yeah.
But also there's so many different other demographics, especially during summer, for example, when school is out and the students aren't here to come on a Saturday and
Right.
do their EDM.
Yeah.
You'd
So
want to target
bluegrass or something.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we do have Dig and Dirt coming
Oh.
November 15th,
Right
which
on.
is kind of our first foray into something else.
Yeah.
And that's been selling pretty quickly, those tickets. So
Yeah.
I'm
So
excited.
the previous owners didn't want to get into music, like venues. They just
They
kinda
they
like
did. I mean, that's how they made their money. That's how the space is set up. But it takes a lot of effort. I was out until 4:30 a.m. last night, just making sure everyone's taken care of. And it's not going to be like that forever. It's just
Right.
a matter of you're taking over an operation, and you have to be there to make sure that people see that you're present. You don't want people taking money out of tills or feeling like you're an absent owner.
Mhm.
And just showing that presence up front, being able to listen to employees' complaints, customer complaints, and so we can get
feedback.
ready. Exactly. So we're doing the renovation, and we're hoping about 8 weeks. We're going to shut it down for a little bit.
Mm.
Hopefully just a week or two,
Yeah.
and do some improvements to the inside.
Yeah. Like
so,
what?
So
Just basic.
yeah,
kinda-
so right now there's a concession stand up front, and that will be walled off so
Really?
that we can create a space in there where might be able to hang some art or have a hostess up front, essentially, instead of having the concession booths there.
You don't feel like the concession is profitable or worth it?
It's well, on the show nights we have seen a lot of help there in terms of taking load off the bar.
Mhm.
Our bar is the biggest bottleneck right now. You go upstairs, there's a little presidential suite, which it'll eventually be. Right now it's just a paint storage, but you can
Okay.
kind of get a view of what's going on in the space, and you can just see the bar is completely congested.
Right.
'Cause that's where people hang out.
Yeah.
So last night we've had a pop-up bar in the other
Wait, there's
corner
a
of the room.
VIP lounge up there somewhere?
There is, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not officially; it's just a bunch of paint cans,
Right,
but you
right.
have this access to a really nice.
Is
Really
it
nice
gonna
view.
be accessible?
It will be,
Oh,
yeah.
right
I mean, it'll be like a VIP.
Nice.
As you come in to the left, we'll have a regular VIP area.
So you're trying to like streamline customers so they're not as
Exactly.
yeah, okay.
And
It's
get them away.
congested.
You have the dance floor, which is crowded,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have the bar, which is crowded, and there's a lot of space in between.
Right.
So we put up a pop-up bar last night to kind of get people away.
Yeah. Was it
to-
on that
to-
second stage?
No, it was on the left-hand side, which is
Okay.
usually the quietest. That
Mhm.
second stage is kind of the secondary dance floor, which also fills up
Mm.
if when the room gets pretty full. But the left side is reserved. Like just usually people like sitting there on the chairs that we kind of still have sitting out there.
Yeah.
So it's a more chill space.
Mm.
And
So the pop-up bar was pretty efficient.
yeah, it was good. It was credit only.
Mm.
So we've just they didn't have a credit card system before we bought it. Just kind of goes to show the thought process. You have to pay 3%. You have to pay about 20 grand to bring in a new system. And they had an ATM in the lobby. So they're looking at, okay, we're making 2 grand from an ATM per year. We're going to lose 3% of our sales. But they don't look at the fact that when people come into, especially a bar environment, before we had the credit card system in there, you'd have people come in, walk to the ATM, and they're making a decision: how much money am I going to spend throughout the night?
Right.
And
Yeah.
when
You don't want them to make that decision.
exactly. No, I mean, I want people to come in and not think about that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like it's a little weird because coming from the financial services industry, where rightfully so, everything has been regulated to death. Everything is, we have to be super transparent. Everything's written in a contract. So when I'm kind of like thinking these things like, oh, I don't want people to go to the ATM because I don't want them to have that thought process. To me, that feels a little weird because we're not allowed to do that. In the finance industry, you have to be super straightforward. But here, it's like we're selling a $5 drink.
Right.
The potential loss in terms of financial loss to someone isn't very big.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to nudge people into making decisions that make them have a good time in the space. And,
Right.
and that's part of it.
Which is essentially just making less decisions.
Exactly.
Yeah. you want to have a good time, you want to make less decisions.
Exactly. And we're not providing financial advice from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. We're providing a space to have fun in. And the prices are on the board. So
Right. Yeah. So in addition to the renovation of the wall off that area, so are you going to be able to like walk in there and then like see paintings, or?
It depends. We've kind of learned some things over the last 4 weeks. So we're about 4.5 weeks into having owned it now. So it's still pretty fresh.
Oh, super fresh.
And we're making some changes to our renovation plans. But yeah, for example, having it open during Arts Alive.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that'd be good.
People are walking through. You want to have that space accessible, be it for restaurant operations or an art gallery on the inside. There's a lot of different ideas, and that's really cool about the ATL is that everyone has an idea. Just because if it were any other 10,000 square foot space, no one would really care. You don't just put up a warehouse somewhere and people show up.
Right.
It's because it's a staple in the community, and people know it. So everyone has an idea. People are kind of coming out of the woodworks with this, that, and the other.
Yeah, which is good.
It's good, yeah. And we just need to be able to kind of weed things out and make sure that we're not getting ahead of ourselves, because labor costs, and there's so many different variables in this industry, which is super interesting coming from financial. From a financial viewpoint, makes you realize like you really shouldn't try and go out and do this. If you're not doing, like for me, because we have the real estate, it makes it a lot better transaction, because even if we just break even on the bar or the restaurant or the theater operations, you're still making money off the real estate through appreciation. I'm sure that's why you're kind of in the industry as well, because that's what people, that's why people gravitate towards that. And we have Smugs and the barber shop downstairs that, pay us a small amount of rent, but it's a diversification.
You own all of that too?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize. It
they're
didn't even occur to me that it was the same building.
They're all in the same building.
Wow.
So
now you already got tenants too.
Well, yeah, and so since my office is upstairs, I'm also paying myself rent.
Right.
So it's just the diversification of income stream, which is good, especially in where we are, kind of in the stock market. In general, it's been 10 years since the last big crash.
It's looming.
Exactly. It's about 7 years is what they give it. So people are ready to throw in the towel.
Right.
But
Just
elections coming up, and people are going to do anything in their power, especially Republicans being in office right now, to keep that economy going good and keep the stock market up. So you kind of just have to, on the financial services side, we're not Goldman Sachs, we're not one of the big companies that can move a market. We need to recognize where we stand in the space and move aside
and try and ride it.
Exactly. You can't catch a falling knife, or you shouldn't try to catch a falling knife. And that's where it's like, I don't really care, who becomes president or what happens to the economy. I mean, I do care for personal reasons, but not in terms of providing financial advice. I just need to do what's best in this situation. And with a lot of financial advisors, gets to your head, and it is always ego involved. And the reason I'm in the financial advising space is because the guy who was previously running, or the precursor to my current business, he was probably 23 at the time, back in 2014, and he was running a hedge fund and got cocky and made a few bad decisions, and thought when he made a trade, and the result of that trade was making money, that it was his. genius. It was his doing instead of just maybe some luck, maybe just the market moving up over, a period of time.
Yeah, there's always a little bit of luck.
Exactly. I mean, I would say I try to look at it. It's mostly luck. That way, I don't get ahead of myself in terms of thinking, oh, it's
it
me.
keeps you humble.
Exactly. And so he bought himself, a McLaren and a Porsche and a Tesla, and things got really bad. And he made charges to the fund essentially that
he couldn't cover it.
He couldn't, but you can't do. You can charge money to a fund, like if you have legal expenses or CPA or what have you, but you can't charge he went to a strip club, charged it to the fund. He charged his McLaren to the fund, and so that's embezzling essentially, indirect embezzling. So we took over his book of business. He was left with about 25 clients, and that's
your financial advising business.
Exactly. That's how we started that. Because previously I was in the IT space. I had never really wanted to be in financial advising. Yeah. And I was 2 doors down from this office complex where he was running it, and I'd talked to him, previously, but when everything happened, myself and John Figueredo, the heir, I guess, to the Figueredo video, stores that were up on, I think G Street, or H Street, across from Wild Berries. It's the video rental store. It was a staple, in the community. But then when VHS DVDs fell out of favor.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with the name. But
yeah, there's a building across from Wild Berries, Figueredo building. So he's Figueredo Jr. And we started the business together, Sisu Capital. And
that's the name of your financial group?
Name of my financial.
What was it?
Sisu Capital. So
Sisu?
That's SISU.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he has Finnish heritage, and it's a Finnish word.
Oh, okay.
And it means, it's one of those words that you cannot exactly translate. The simple translation would be go. Right. But how it's used is perseverance in the face of adversity. So he's a runner. So that's kind of a motto that runners use.
Oh yeah.
To persevere against that limit you're up against. Exactly. Yeah. So we parted ways in 2016. We've just had disagreements about how much risk we should take on in the business. I think it's good to have discussions and disagreements when you run a business. Why else would you bring someone in, other than a secretary? When you bring in other people, you want to hear their opinion and their expertise. But it just got a little bit too far apart to where I was at a different point in my life where I wanted to shoot higher, and it just wouldn't have worked because we would have always been on each other's.
Was he older?
Yeah, he's only a few years, maybe like 5 or 6 years older than me. Okay. Interesting. But he just had different expectations. Yeah.
He wanted to get a little bit more safe.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is, at the time we were already 6-7 years into a bull market. So that was his logic, but now it's drawn on a few more years. So it's worked out so far. But so when we split ways, I kept the name Sisu Capital. He then went on to start Sisu Extracts, which is also operating up here.
Is that a financial?
No, they
extracts do like the weed.
Yeah. Okay. They take biomass, I think it's called, and it's like whatever's left over. Okay. Don't quote me on this because I don't know. I toured the production plant once. It's pretty impressive, but they're pretty high production, and they turn it into this maple syrup looking extract. Okay. But yeah, so he kept that name. So now I get people walking in my office a few times a week. Oh, you're hiring, and no. Because they're usually expecting to walk into some warehouse and they're wearing like Dickies and overall Dickies, and it's not the right look for financial advice, even up here in Humboldt County.
Yeah. No. So what do you think your expertise is in the financial sector? Are you pretty skilled in the stock market, or do you?
So when I started my business, I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I was just fresh 19 at the time, and it's very hard for someone young who is obviously young, and I don't have a college degree. I don't have anything backing me up to where I can say, like, what do you say to someone who walks in? My first client that I got, after we took over the book of business that I got by myself, he essentially blew all his money. He's left with like $500,000, but his burn rate was $300,000 a year. So how do you tell him as a 20-year-old or 19-year-old that he needs to drastically
like, hey,
change?
man, you're fucking up.
Exactly. He needs to change his life, and he needs to listen to me.
Right.
It's you're towing such a thin line.
Yeah, it's hard to put down that foot of authority.
Exactly. So what we specialize in is we don't charge commissions. We don't charge management fees. We don't charge an hourly rate. All we charge is a performance fee. So when the amount of what we manage for the client goes up, we take a cut of that.
Right.
And that way, whenever I walk into a meeting, that's kind of my trap card, because I lead with our strategy.
Yeah.
But when at the end, it's like, okay, if we do something to where the account, doesn't go up as quickly as the market, or is really struggling through an environment where it shouldn't be, we're not going to get paid. If the account's going flat, we're not getting paid at all. And
you
that
lose
puts
money
us,
if they lose money?
If it we're allowed by regulatory guidelines, I would definitely do it that way.
But
we're not allowed to do it. That's called rebating. You can't give the client money back.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So if we do make them money and then we lose money, we don't charge them until we make all of that money back, obviously. But yeah, we can't give them money directly. Maybe if they change rules, we do that, because we do want to be in the same boat, as the client. But when it comes to our strategy, what it consists of is a reversion to the mean. What happens often is you'll have the stock market move. What happened last year in February, there were large volatility, and there's these financial instruments called puts and calls. Essentially what they are insurance. So if you have a stock position on and that's moving, you can buy a put which would secure your position. It's like saying, okay, I bought a stock at 200, I buy the put at 190. So if it goes to 190, I'm safe. I can't lose any more money, even though I still own the stock.
Is it going to automatically sell?
No, it will keep that. And then, so I'm the one who's selling people these put options. And what happens is when stock markets move, let's say they move 10%, they drop down. People were instinctually habitual creatures, so we recognize patterns. And when we see something drop 10% over 4 weeks, we see that happening again. Even though the reality is now something's dropped 10%, now it's cheaper. So now it's actually a better buy, and the likelihood of it dropping even further is less. So what we do is we step in and we sell these put options. It would be like, an analogy I use a lot is the earthquake analogy. If an earthquake hits Arcata right now, two things are going to happen. Statistically, I'm not going to speak to a geological standpoint, but statistically, the chance of another earthquake happening is a lot lower. And the other thing is everyone is thinking about earthquake insurance. So when I come in as the earthquake insurance salesman, I can charge a higher premium for a lesser product, because the likelihood of my product having to pay out has now immediately decreased. So that's what we're doing. Whenever there's volatility, we're stepping in.
And you think people are going to buy that
exactly
because they're scared of another earthquake?
Exactly.
Even though it's
the likelihood is, so we make thousands of transactions and we make very small amounts of money. The loss and then the potential loss is huge, but the chances of that loss happening is very small. And as humans, we're bad at judging very low risk probability incidents. Right. Why do we have health insurance or car insurance? It's because life insurance, exactly. Yeah. No one ever thinks that they're gonna have an accident today, or that they're gonna get sick and the bill is gonna be hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's why we have those products. So we're providing people, not our clients, we're using our clients' funds to provide other investors a peace of mind, so that they can sleep well at night, essentially. And that's how we make our money, and that's what they're paying for, is essentially peace of mind, and not actually a product that offers anything. But I'm not going to delve too much into that part of stuff. It took me a long time to just wrap my head around these financial concepts, products, because it's something that's abstract. That earthquake analogy kind of brings it back to
something that we can relate to,
reality.
tangible.
But then those are just put options, and there's call options on the other side that are a whole other, essentially the opposite of that. But it puts us in a position where right now, where people are a little scared of what's going on, is we can provide them something that's actively managed, and that does well in a high volatility environment, which especially with politics and all of that is definitely on the horizon.
Gets muddied.
Exactly.
The which markets do you go in? Can you talk about that? Is it like commodities? Or?
Yeah, so we trade futures markets, but we usually trade a futures version of like the S&P 500. So we just do that so we can trade basically 24 hours a day. But the product is just that S&P 500, which is 500 of the largest companies in the U.S.
So you're working off the averages?
Yes, pretty much. If there is a situation where there's high volatility in a specific stock or a commodity, then we will jump into that. We've done oil, U.S. Treasuries, gold.
And you see when you notice like a big dip, then you're like, oh, okay.
Exactly. We have a watch list where that stuff shows up. Things that are high volatility. Even individual companies, GoPro. That was actually the one stock that blew up the previous fund from that other young financial advisor that we took the book over, was GoPro, and that he invested into that right when they came out, and they dropped off a lot. But if you can have it a small part of your portfolio, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
You only want to make those small amounts of money. You don't want to hit the jackpot every single time. We also did Valiant.
Consistency.
Exactly. Valiant Pharmaceuticals, which was a horror story. It went from 90 to like 5 and it's probably bankrupt now.
Damn.
But that was also a situation where we jumped in and said, okay, we're going to sell some put options. We lost a lot of money on them, but it's still, as a part of our overall portfolio, it's a small amount. So it's mainly about managing that risk, and also managing the client. It's less so money management and more so client management. You
have to calm him down too.
Exactly. Expectations, calm him down, take him out to lunch, dinner, golfing, what have you. That's usually the most manual labor I do. Is
pat him on the back. It's gonna be okay.
Exactly. And as I'm getting older and more experienced, I'm also comes along with that some confidence.
A little more wise.
Exactly. And I can pick apart criticisms that people have about either the economy or the trading we have, and that I think goes a long way to make them feel a little bit more assured that that same client that I took over at the very beginning, he still kind of doesn't really 100% think I know what I'm talking about, even 5 years on.
He's not working for you, right?
No, he's a client of mine. Yeah.
Oh, he's a client.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the older gentleman who had blown essentially most of his life savings. So I talk to him like every week, but he still doesn't quite trust me. He always gives me a little bit of a a look of suspicion. But it's come a long way. It's
natural.
Yeah. Can't teach an old dog new tricks sometimes.
That's funny. Yeah, you sound like you know what you're talking about.
Well, that's what half of it is. You just gotta sound like you know what you're doing.
So yeah, you run the business upstairs and then the ATL downstairs.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm helping Joe kind of get off the ground with this. I want to be as hands off as possible. I love Humboldt County. I grew up here, but at the same time, the more time I spend away from Humboldt County, the more I enjoy it coming back.
You're right.
It's
you have to leave to appreciate.
Exactly. It's an environment where people. That's why I did the ATL. Part of it, why I did this here, is because I can affect a lot more in this community by doing a lot less. If I were doing the same thing in San Francisco, I wouldn't be talking to anyone about this. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. No one would care until you're like in the top 5.
Exactly. So here I can have a much bigger impact on the community. But having to run this day to day, doesn't allow me that freedom that I really like, which is I'm always working, but I'm also always on vacation kind of. I can always leave, but then I get the, weird phone call at 10 p.m. or 5 a.m. about a client, who has a panic attack, who's waking up in a cold sweat. But I
think a lot of people don't realize, like, once you reach a level of success, there is no like off switch. Like
exactly.
You're always working, even if it is you're golfing, you're still networking.
Exactly. Some of my wealthiest clients, their full-time job is just managing their own money. You know, it's a job in and of itself. So they've completely retired. I mean, they have more money than they'd ever need.
Yeah.
But it still
requires work.
And it's still something, you know, fun to do, and you know, picking different investments and all these IPOs that are coming out, Airbnb. It's all very interesting products, and you kind of want to be, you know, part of that. It's fun to be on these board meetings and shareholder meetings and inside, especially in San Francisco, where a lot of that stuff, you know, is happening. But yeah, it is. It's always working, but I really enjoy that. You know, I can't get enough of it. But then I also need to be able to kind of go different places. I need to, when I go down to the Bay Area, you know, everyone's kind of living the rat race down there, which is overall, I would say, bad, but also it gets you going, you know. It's like everyone's looking over. It's like, okay, I've got to be hustling. Otherwise, in the Bay Area, you're going to be homeless in, you know, 6 weeks if you don't, you know, you don't make it.
Yeah, if you don't grind.
Exactly. So I like splitting my time there, and that's why I don't want to be running the ATL day to day, or have to be present day to day. I want to hand that off to Joe, but right now I'm just taking care of the financial things. It is super, super interesting. Right. The point of sale system that we have, you know, every single bottle of vodka that comes in, or every single bottle of anything, gets scanned, and then every single sale, you know, we make takes out like a 20th of the bottle of vodka, so that we have, we know exactly, you know, how many bottles are supposed to be in there. And when that's different, we know, okay, someone's pouring too long, or we're wasting stuff, or someone took a bottle.
3 fingers, goddammit.
Hey, if they're charging for 3 fingers, they can have 3 fingers. But it's just, you know, it's a system that, it's essentially a full-time job. What this system does, it does ordering for you. If you're low on something, it'll automatically send out an email to the vendor.
You created this program or software?
It's a system called Revel. Okay. It's off-the-shelf point-of-sale system. But there's a lot of
it's good.
labor you have to do to actually keep it running, because I mean, right now I have it set up to where it'll give me exactly like what our cost is for a shot of vodka. And every time, we buy, you know, new well vodkas, like this time we got a different brand because they didn't have the other one. Now our price is, you know, slightly, like by fractions of a penny, is more or less.
But you have to input that. So
exactly. So you just scan the invoice you get, and that goes into inventory. And that stuff, to me, just all these analytics, and you know, you take in a product and you sell this product, is something that, you know, I don't know in the finance space. I'm selling myself, my expertise, my advice, but I'm not selling, you know, it's completely different than taking something in, having to figure out your labor cost and setup cost and training cost and taxes, and then having to sell that product as well. It's something that's kind of like, you know, it's very like A to Z. It's very easy to explain. Yeah. There's a lot going on, but you can
put it into action.
It's the typical business. You know, it's that lemonade stand example that they use a lot.
Right. To explain.
Exactly. So it's kind of, we're affecting that, and being able to dial that all in, and kind of give Joe at least a system that's running. Yeah. Once he gets over, you know, taking care of the day to day right now, which is just a lot of small things. Yeah.
I don't want you to speak on Joe's behalf, but how did you guys kind of team up, and what do you think his aspiration is for the
ATL? So I probably met him 2 or 3 years ago, and when I was in the ATL transaction the first time, which was, I would say, almost 2 years ago, I sat down with Joe. The plan was to take over the existing business and just have them kind of run it. They have a bar manager that was just going to run it, and I sat down with Joe because he's, you know, very social person, and I asked him if he wanted to be like an ambassador for the ATL. And he said,
greatest title ever. You want to be an ambassador? Well, yes, I do.
It's basically, you know, hang out. We want to hang out where Joe is, type of thing. So he said sure, and the deal did not go through. We could not get the financing together. When you have a business with declining revenue, no one wants to jump in, especially lend you know.
I'm good for it, I swear.
$1.8 million to do that, especially someone with no, you know, experience in the industry.
Right.
And so kind of project was dead in the water for a few months, and then Joe called me out of the blue that he had found someone who could invest money, and we sat down with him, And he ended up not wanting to invest money because he didn't think it was a good investment, but he was willing to lend money. So together with him and one other lender, private lender, individual here in the community, we put together a private money deal to pick it up.
That's the best way to go.
Exactly. But once Joe kind of brought in that or kicked it on again, he got a lot more involved, and he has really attention to detail. Sometimes a perfectionist, sometimes to a fault, but that means that he's not going to put his name on anything that he doesn't really want to put his name on. And so kind of just evolved into him, being the day-to-day manager and having ownership in the whole project as well. And I think, his strengths are definitely bringing people into the space and also interacting with artists, potential artists, people we want to book, dealing with dancers. We have a whole dance team that he set up in the last, 3 weeks. I think we're 4 to 6 dancers right now. And, it's really a well-oiled machine. Sometimes, there's a lot going on and it's like, oh, this doesn't happen or this doesn't happen. But then you see everything that is working. Somehow we have...
People are walking in the door.
Exactly. People are walking in the door. There's dancers up there. They're rotating every 30 minutes. The DJ's playing music. The sound guy's there. The lighting guy's there. So he really, can set that all up and make it run. So I think that's really where his strength is. And that's why I kind of want to take over things that I want to give him as many hours a week to do that, because that's what's going to get in and, sell people on everything. What I do in terms of looking at the analytics and giving him the spreadsheet of how much money we're making or losing doesn't help. It helps us maybe fix some problems, but at the end of the day, that spreadsheet is not going to exist if there's no one selling, or no one buying anything. So that's really where our strength is. And that's where I saw it, from the beginning, but it's really become a lot, tighter knit business relationship. And he's been, right now he's essentially running it day to day and doing what a house manager
what he
would
needs
do.
to.
Exactly.
I'm curious. I don't know if you can answer this, but how long is that mortgage? Is it a 30-year?
So these private money loans we have are a very high interest rate.
Oh yeah, you didn't go through a bank.
Exactly.
Okay.
But what it allows us to do is get the property at a lot lower price. And because of that, with just the way the business had been running previously, we're able to cover our mortgage payment. And that's a 1-year term. So after that 1 year is up, we're going to go out and get what's called an SBA loan, Small Business Administration. And it's a government guaranteed loan. They guarantee 50% of the loan. So if we go to a bank and say, okay, we want 1.5 million, the federal government will guarantee the other 750,000. They won't give it to us, but they'll guarantee it. So if we default on the loan, the bank is only out 750, but since it's collateralized by a building, they'll probably won't be out anything,
right?
Because they just go to auction, sell the building, sell the liquor license,
get their money,
and they get their money. And those amortization schedules are usually 20 years, but the rates are super low because they're guaranteed. So at 20 years, it's shorter than 30 years, which makes it so it's kind of, if you look at a 30-year mortgage, for the first 5 years, you're not paying anything in principal. And on the 20-year, it really makes a pretty drastic difference in terms of the amount of interest you're paying over the period of the whole loan, and how quickly you're drawing that down. And that also gives you the opportunity to be a little bit more flexible in how you run your business. Because if you take your, let's just say, you had to pay $10,000 in rent, that money's gone, and it's gone forever. You're never going to see that again if you're running a restaurant. That's what makes it, to me, so harrowing when people try and start a restaurant, just lease a space, put a year lease, put their name down for that. Let's say it's, $3,000. I mean, that's $36,000 right there in cost that it's not negotiable. It's a fixed cost. And that, to me, it just does not make sense.
Right.
Even if you're doing it with the bar, it's probably a lot easier, but it's just still, you're just barely kind of keeping your head above water, and you're just paying off some other guy's mortgage.
Right.
So I think the real estate is really what made it in this circumstance. And it gives us collateral, if we want to go out and get another loan or for the renovation. The city of Arcata is giving us a business development loan, which is essentially based on how many people we hire to give us a certain amount of money.
Okay.
So they want us, spending and hiring people here locally, and then they'll give us a loan for that. And those are super low interest rates.
Right.
And
you're gonna use that to help with the renovation.
Exactly. So they don't do refinancing with those loans. They want us to do new things with that loan. So, but it'll do things that increase the value of the property, which decreases our loan to value.
Yeah.
Which makes it so that in a year's time, when we have to go out and refinance everything else, we'll be able to bring the rates, way down and have a good asset on our hands.
Yeah. I'm always curious how creative people can get when they're trying to buy some property. It's like, well, this didn't work. Well, we can try this or try this or try this, and you just make it happen.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's something where there's an intersection there between finances and people. We were in escrow twice. We were in escrow back in January, and when it fell through, it was kind of a blow. Like Joe had put together the whole handbook. He put together a menu. We'd already tasted the menu and everything. There was a lot of work that already went into it, and you don't get paid for that. It's done. And the reason that all fell apart was we were having our inspection period, and the roof guys were the last ones to come by. There was the day before the inspection was over. We already had extended it once. The guys go up there, and it's raining, and they kind of, maybe we shouldn't inspect it today. And the seller says, no, we need to have this inspected today.
Right,
the inspection period is over tomorrow. So they kind of roll their eyes, go up there and pull back this panel of the roof, and they're like, the whole thing is rotted. Oh. And it's like, shit. So we tried to get, the next day we go back to them, and they say, okay, new roof is going to be like $95,000. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. We'll pay for it, because the price was already so good at that point that we wanted it under any circumstance, but they wouldn't extend our inspection period to go and check. The $95,000 is just a number they throw out. You don't know how bad it actually is once you get in there. But the inspection period, they wouldn't let us extend it. So the deal fell through. And that's something where, had it not rained, had you maybe given them an extra day to actually check it out, because what happened later on when we were in escrow the second time is they went through the whole roof and realized that was literally that single patch that they pulled up that was rotted and nothing else.
Just that.
So the roof is totally fine for probably another 7 to 10 years.
Wow.
So it's just something like that where you kind of got to pick and choose your battles, give it a few more days in terms of that inspection period.
That's funny.
And, we saved a good amount of money on the deal, because it was then, 4 or 5 months later, and every single day that passed, it becomes more difficult, because you have a business that is so closely linked with a real estate, where if the business isn't doing well, you can't have a barber shop in the main space. You can't, just open it up. It does have a kitchen in there, but it's not a restaurant kitchen. It's just kind of deep fryer and grill top. You can't, just lease it out, especially not, if it's 8,500 square feet, the main floor. Who's going to pay $8,500 in rent if they're paying $1 per square foot?
Right.
For a space like that. Like, I don't know who will come in there. You see, Golden Harvest next door. Yeah. It's been vacant for a while now.
Yeah.
I know
and that
she's trying to sell it.
Restaurant.
Exactly. They're still, I think they're still open in Eureka, but I remember going to Golden Harvest all the time as a kid.
Right.
But anyone who goes into that space now, they're going to have to sign a year lease or buy the building, or sign a year lease and pay $150,000 to just redo the space, just to get it up to spec in terms of health code and just what people expect out of a restaurant. You see what they did with...
especially if it's new, they want something new.
Look at Salt and Campground, amazingly executed, at least in terms of the ambiance, the feel when you walk in. That's you're kind of up against that, otherwise... You already have your Don's Donuts. You have your middle of the road, sushi spot, Tomo's and stuff like that. And then you have your Salt and your Campground. So, what else are you going to do? Exactly. I think Renata's opening up there has probably also hit them pretty bad, because Renata's place is always packed to the T. I think they've kind of mastered it with that simple crepe and nothing else really.
Yeah.
Since we do performance-based fees, it's hard for me to go and provide advice to someone who doesn't have a lot of money.
Right.
Because another financial advisor could charge a commission or could charge an hourly rate to make a financial plan, whereas we just don't do that at all. So I can either provide it on like a pro bono basis, like as a friend, or otherwise you got to be like north of $1 million for it to be even worth, otherwise it's taken away from other, potential clients.
And that old saying, you got to have money to make money.
Exactly. So in this environment, anyone can listen to it, it's leverageable, it's scalable.
There you go,
it's a lot better. Yeah. But yeah, next time I definitely want to maybe you get Joe on here once we're closer to doing the
After the renovation.
Exactly. And I think he has a lot of interesting stuff. He can go into more detail there. And he has a pretty interesting story as well, going to college here, and his coach at HSU, it was our real estate agent on the transaction, so it's one of those small town things, but it's just super interesting how closely knit everything is. I mean, just growing up, like the guy who's doing our sound is the guy who sold my mom all the musical instruments she had me play, as a kid, violin and banjo and pianos and what have you. So it's the same exact guy, and it's just like it's some good, some bad, but
I think that's one of the things that people like about Humboldt is like you're going to work with people pretty much for the rest of your life, like if people stay here, just like you said, you're going to use him for one thing, and then he's going to, everyone has multiple things that they got going on.
And you can't really mess up. You can't, I don't flip anyone off when I'm driving down the street, even if they cut me off or
because they're going to see you on the plaza.
Exactly. I mean, it could be, the daughter of the mayor. I mean, I don't know how much clout the Arcata mayor has, but
probably not much.
But it could just be the wrong person, and then especially when you're doing something public facing like the ATL, it's like you just got to be nice to everyone. Especially like last night, they start getting drunk and they start becoming assholes. I need this drink right now and this and that, and it's just like you're just dealing with a bunch of 6-year-olds, and that's how you got to look at it. Because otherwise, you just start taking it personally.
Yeah, you do. You got some thick skin. Yeah. Well, Tim, man.
Anyways,
thanks for coming on. Thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it, dude. Oh.